When was the last time you sat in complete silence and realized you had no idea what your own mind was trying to tell you? Not 5 years ago, not when you were a child, right now. Think about that. You spend your days surrounded by noise, endless voices, endless notifications, endless opinions. Yet somehow, in the middle of all that activity, something still feels missing. Maybe you're exhausted, even after resting. Maybe you're constantly busy, but never truly satisfied. Maybe you've been searching for answers, hoping the next video, the next book, or the next piece of advice will finally make everything click. But what if the answer you've been chasing isn't hidden in more information? What if the thing you've needed all along has been buried beneath all the noise? Stay with this, because what you're about to understand has the power to change the way you think, the way you feel, and perhaps even the direction of your life. Most people are terrified of silence, not because silence is empty, but because silence is honest. Noise is comforting. It keeps you distracted. It gives you something to focus on besides yourself. The music, the scrolling, the constant need to stay entertained. It feels harmless. But little by little, something important disappears. Your clarity. Without realizing it, you begin living on autopilot. You react instead of choosing. You consume instead of creating. You move through the days without ever stopping long enough to ask yourself one simple question. Am I even living the life I truly want? That question scares people, because deep down, many already know the answer. And that is exactly why they keep running. Running from boredom, running from discomfort, running from the thoughts waiting quietly beneath the surface. But silence doesn't exist to punish you. It exists to reveal you. For just a moment, everything slows down. No one is demanding your attention. No one is telling you who to be. No one is competing with your thoughts. And suddenly, things become impossible to ignore. Dreams you abandoned, goals you postponed, promises you made to yourself and quietly forgot. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, almost painful, because distractions are easy. Honesty is not. But there is something strange about discomfort. Sometimes, it isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. Sometimes, it's proof that you're finally paying attention. And maybe that's what you've been missing. Not more motivation, not more productivity hacks, not another reason to push harder. Maybe you've simply been giving up everything around you attention while neglecting the person living inside your own mind. The truth is, your greatest answers rarely arrive when life is loud. They appear when everything becomes quiet enough for you to hear them. And the beautiful thing is that it doesn't require hours. It doesn't require a retreat in the mountains. It doesn't require changing your entire life. It only requires your willingness to stop. Because a single minute can expose what months of distractions have hidden. A single minute can remind you what truly matters. A single minute can reconnect you with parts of yourself that have been ignored for far too long. Most people will never experience this, not because they lack time, but because they fear what they might discover. They fear the truth. They fear the emotions. They fear facing themselves. Yet the greatest transformations often begin with something incredibly small. A pause, a breath, a moment of stillness. And maybe the reason you feel stuck isn't because you're broken. Maybe you've just been surrounded by so much noise that you've forgotten what your own voice sounds like. So before this day ends, give yourself something the world constantly tries to steal. 60 seconds of silence. No phone, no music, no distractions, just you. Because you might discover that peace was never missing. Clarity was never gone. The person you've been searching for was never lost. They've been there all along, waiting patiently, waiting quietly, waiting for you to finally stop long enough to listen. And once you hear that voice again, something unexpected begins to happen. You start noticing things you were too distracted to see. Not out there, inside yourself. You notice how much energy you've been wasting trying to impress people who don't even think about you. You notice how many dreams you've delayed because you kept waiting for the perfect moment. You notice how often you've betrayed your own priorities just to avoid disappointing everyone else. And suddenly, the life you've been living doesn't feel accidental anymore. It feels chosen, not because you consciously picked it, but because every day you stayed distracted, every day you avoided stillness, every day you postponed reflection, you made a decision without realizing it. And that realization changes everything. Because if your current life was built through repeated choices, then a different life can be built the same way. Not through luck, not through talent, not through some miracle reserved for other people, through awareness. Most people underestimate awareness because it doesn't look dramatic, it doesn't make headlines, it doesn't impress strangers. But awareness is dangerous because once you see clearly, excuses lose their power. You can no longer blame circumstances for everything. You can no longer pretend you don't know what needs to change. And that's why so many people remain busy. Busyness is easier than honesty. Distraction is easier than responsibility. Noise is easier than truth. Truth demands something. Truth asks you to stop lying to yourself. Truth asks you to admit that some habits are destroying your future. Truth asks you to admit that some fears have been controlling your decisions for years. Truth asks you to admit that you've been settling for less than you're capable of. That hurts, but pain isn't always your enemy. Sometimes, pain is the signal that you've been asleep for too long. Think about how many days have disappeared without your permission. Weeks, months, years. Entire chapters of life consumed by routines you never questioned. You told yourself you would start later. You told yourself you needed more confidence. You told yourself you needed better circumstances. But life kept moving. It never slowed down. It never waited. And one day, without warning, later becomes too late. That is what makes this so important. Because the cost of distraction isn't measured in hours. It's measured in missed opportunities, missed memories, missed versions of yourself that never had the chance to exist. There is a person you could become. Stronger, calmer, more focused, more alive. That person is not a fantasy. That person is waiting behind the choices you keep postponing. And the distance between who you are and who you could become is often much smaller than you think. Not years, not impossible sacrifices. Sometimes the distance is a decision, a moment, a willingness to finally stop running. Because the truth you've been avoiding has been chasing you for a long time. Not to destroy you, to free you. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to pretend to be fearless. You don't need permission. You need honesty. You need courage. And courage doesn't mean having no fear. It means refusing to let fear make every decision for you. The world has trained you to believe that more noise means more progress, more content, more speed, more stimulation. But some of the greatest breakthroughs happen in complete silence. Because silence strips away illusions. It removes the masks. It exposes what truly matters. And what truly matters has never been fame. It has never been status. It has never been proving yourself to people who are too busy fighting their own battles. What truly matters is whether you are becoming the person you were meant to be. Because at the end of the day, you will live with your choices. You will live with your habits. You will live with the voice inside your head. And if that voice has been buried beneath endless noise, then nothing outside of you will ever feel enough. Not success, not money, not applause. Because peace cannot be found where you lost yourself. It begins the moment you are willing to meet yourself again, and that meeting has the power to change everything. And when you finally meet yourself again, you may not recognize what you find, not because you've changed, because you've forgotten what it feels like to be present, forgotten what it feels like to think without interruption, forgotten what it feels like to exist without constantly reaching for something to distract you. That forgetting didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly, one notification at a time, one excuse at a time, one more day of postponing your own life, until the noise became normal, until rest felt uncomfortable, until silence itself started feeling strange. But silence was never the enemy. It was the mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They show you the truth you've been trying not to see. The truth that some things in your life need to end. Some habits, some beliefs, some stories you've repeated so many times that you've mistaken them for reality. Stories that say you're too late. Stories that say you've missed your chance. Stories that say other people are special and you're just ordinary. But those stories were never facts. They were fears. And fear has a way of speaking with confidence. Fear sounds convincing. Fear sounds reasonable. Fear sounds like safety. But safety has trapped more dreams than failure ever has. Because failure hurts. But regret stays. Regret follows you. Quiet moments. Regret reminds you of the person you could have become. Not because you lacked ability, because you lacked action. And action doesn't begin when you feel ready. It begins when you become tired of staying the same. That moment is powerful because something changes when the pain of remaining where you are becomes greater than the fear of moving forward. Suddenly, excuses lose their grip. Suddenly, waiting no longer feels comfortable. Suddenly, you realize that your life is happening right now. Not someday, not after everything becomes perfect. Right now. This ordinary day, this ordinary moment, these ordinary choices. Because life is not built through giant events. Life is built through repeated decisions. And every decision is casting a vote for the person you're becoming. Every distraction, every promise kept, every promise broken. Every moment you choose comfort over growth, every moment you choose courage over fear, you are always becoming someone. Someone you'll be proud to meet. Because time is moving whether you notice it or not. As you listen to these words, your life is moving. Another hour, another day, another chance that will never come again. And perhaps that's what makes your existence so valuable. Not because it lasts forever, because it doesn't. Life is precious precisely because it is limited. Because one day, all the noise will stop. The deadlines, the worries, the endless race. None of it will matter as much as you think. What will matter is whether you truly lived, whether you loved deeply, whether you showed courage when fear demanded surrender, whether you became honest with yourself, whether you listened to the voice inside you instead of the voices around you. And that voice has been patient. Even after all the distractions, even after all the doubts, even after all the times you ignored it, it never abandoned you. It simply waited. Because beneath your fears, beneath your mistakes, beneath your disappointments, there is still something beautiful inside you. Something untouched. Something stronger than you realize. Something that refuses to disappear. Hope. Not blind hope, not fantasy. The quiet belief that your story is not finished, that your best days are not automatically behind you, that healing is possible, that growth is possible, that change is possible. And maybe that belief doesn't arrive with applause. Maybe it arrives in silence, in a single minute where the world finally becomes quiet enough for you to remember something you desperately needed to hear. You are not here merely to survive. You are here to awaken, to grow, to create, to love, to become. And the journey toward that life doesn't begin with noise. It begins with stillness. Because sometimes the smallest pause becomes the beginning of the greatest transformation. Because transformation rarely announces itself. It doesn't knock on your door with perfect timing. It doesn't wait until you feel confident. It doesn't ask whether you're ready. It simply arrives the Moment you decide that enough is enough, enough running, enough hiding, enough giving your attention to everything except your own life. Because attention is your most valuable resource. Where your attention goes, your life follows. And right now, millions of people are handing away that power without even realizing it. They wake up distracted. They spend their days distracted. They fall asleep distracted. And somewhere in between, years disappear. Not because they were stolen, because they were surrendered. One unconscious day at a time. Don't let that become your story. Because there is something extraordinary about becoming aware. Awareness gives you your life back. It allows you to see what truly deserves your energy. It teaches you that not every thought deserves belief. Not every fear deserves obedience. Not every opinion deserves your attention. And not every battle deserves your peace. That changes everything. Because peace is not something you find after controlling the world. Peace is something you protect by controlling yourself. And the world will constantly tempt you to forget that. It will tell you to compare, to chase, to rush, to prove, to consume, to become addicted to endless stimulation. But a life spent chasing everything eventually loses sight of what matters most. You. Not the image people have of you. Not the expectations placed upon you. Not the version of yourself you've been performing. The real you. The one hidden beneath the pressure. The one hidden beneath the fear. The one hidden beneath years of noise. That person deserves your attention. That person deserves your honesty. That person deserves a chance. Because no one else can live your life for you. No one else can make your decisions. No one else can become who you were created to become. And perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't failure. Perhaps the greatest tragedy is reaching the end and realizing you never truly knew yourself. That you spent your entire life reacting, entirely life-pleasing, entirely life-escaping, stopping long enough to ask yourself what actually mattered. That question changes people. Because once you ask it sincerely, you can no longer sleepwalk through your days. You begin noticing the beauty you once ignored. A quiet morning, a deep breath, a meaningful conversation. Moments that don't demand attention but deserve appreciation. And suddenly, success starts looking different. It becomes less about applause and more about alignment. Less about being admired and more about being authentic. Less about having everything and more about appreciating what already exists. Because the truth is simple. You don't need another life. You need to become fully present in the one you already have. That is where gratitude lives. That is where purpose grows. That is where peace begins. And none of those things can survive in a mind that never slows down. Which is why silence matters. Not because silence magically solves every problem, but because silence allows you to face your problems instead of running from them. It gives wisdom room to speak. It gives healing room to begin. It gives truth room to breathe. And maybe that truth is telling you something you've been avoiding for far too long. Maybe it's telling you to forgive yourself. Maybe it's telling you to stop waiting for permission. Maybe it's telling you to stop shrinking to fit inside other people's expectations. Maybe it's telling you that your life is far too valuable to spend it asleep. Because you were never meant to simply exist. You were meant to experience, to grow, to contribute, to become a source of light in a world drowning in noise. And that light does not come from perfection. It comes from presence, from awareness, from choosing, again and again, to return to yourself. Even after mistakes, even after disappointment, even after seasons where you lost your way. Because getting lost does not mean you are gone. It simply means it's time to come home. And sometimes, home is not a place. Sometimes home is a moment, a quiet moment, a single minute. Moment so small that most people overlook it, yet powerful enough to remind you that the life you've been searching for has never been as far away as you imagined. And maybe that is what you've been longing for all this time. Not another escape, not another distraction, not another promise that happiness is waiting somewhere far away. Maybe you've been longing to come back to yourself, because deep down, you already know something has to change. You feel it in the quiet moments. You feel it when the day ends and the distractions fade. You feel it when you realize how quickly life is passing. There is a reason that feeling keeps returning. It is not there to torment you. It is there to wake you up, because there are two kinds of pain, the pain of growth and the pain of regret. One hurts for a moment, the other stays for a lifetime. And every day, without realizing it, people make their choice, not through dramatic decisions, through ordinary habits, through repeated patterns, through what they tolerate, through what they ignore, through the things they tell themselves every single day. That is why this moment matters, because moments become days, days become years, years become lives, and lives become stories. The question is simple. What story are you writing? Not the story you tell people, not the story you post online, the story you live when nobody is watching, because that story reveals everything. It reveals what you truly value. It reveals what you fear. It reveals what you believe you deserve. And beliefs are powerful. Powerful enough to build a beautiful life. Powerful enough to destroy one. If you believe you are powerless, you stop trying. If you believe change is impossible, you stop growing. If you believe your past defines your future, you stop dreaming. But beliefs are not chains. They are choices repeated so often that they feel permanent. And what has been learned can be challenged. What has been repeated can be changed. What has been broken can be rebuilt. You are living proof of that. Because despite everything you faced, you are still here. Despite the disappointments, despite the mistakes, despite the days you doubted yourself, you are still standing. There is strength in that. More strength than you realize. Not because you've done everything perfectly, because you refuse to completely give up. Something inside you kept going. Something inside you kept hoping. Something inside you refused to surrender. Protect that part of yourself, because the world will try to convince you that cynicism is wisdom, that numbness is strength, that constant busyness is success. But none of those things bring peace. They only create distance. Distance from joy. Distance from gratitude. Distance from the person you are capable of becoming. And perhaps the greatest battle you will ever fight is not against the world. It is against the temptation to abandon yourself, to settle, to stop believing, to stop listening, to stop growing. Because growth demands awareness. And awareness demands stillness. That is why silence is so powerful. Not because silence gives you all the answers, because silence forces you to ask the right questions. Questions that change destinies. Questions that expose excuses. Questions that challenge fear. Questions that bring forgotten dreams back to life. And once those dreams awaken, something incredible happens. You stop surviving and start living. You stop drifting and start choosing. You stop waiting and start becoming. That is where purpose begins, not in certainty, not in perfection, but in presence, in the decision to fully show up for your own life. And that decision can happen right now, not after the fear disappears, not after you become someone else, right now. Because this moment is all you've ever truly had. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow is not promised. But this breath, this heartbeat, this opportunity to become more aware, it belongs to you. And perhaps years from now, you won't remember every challenge you faced. You won't remember every worry that kept you awake. You won't remember every voice that doubted you. But you will remember the moment you finally stopped running. The moment you became quiet enough to hear your own truth. The moment you realized that changing your life did not begin with something massive, almost invisible. a pause, a breath, a single minute of silence. And from that silence, an entirely new life was born. And that new life will not announce itself with fireworks. Most people miss this because they have been taught to expect dramatic moments. They believe transformation should feel loud. They believe change should happen overnight. They believe clarity should arrive all at once. But life rarely works that way. The greatest shifts are often invisible in the beginning. A different thought, a deeper breath, a choice to pause instead of react, a decision to listen instead of escape. Small moments, quiet moments, moments that seem insignificant until one day you look back and realize they changed everything. Because your destiny is not created in one giant leap. It is created in the moments nobody applauds, the moments when nobody is watching, the moments when you decide whether to stay asleep or finally wake up. And waking up changes everything. Because once you become conscious of how precious life really is, you stop wasting it on things that don't deserve you. You stop chasing approval from people who cannot define your worth. You stop allowing fear to make every decision. You stop shrinking your dreams to fit inside other people's expectations. You stop treating yourself like someone who has all the time in the world. Because you don't. None of us do. And that truth is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to free you. Freedom begins when you understand that life is not endless. Freedom begins when you realize that every sunrise is a gift. Every conversation, every opportunity, every ordinary moment. These things seem small until they become memories. And memories are all that remain. Not the endless scrolling, not the unnecessary worries, not the countless hours spent escaping. What remains are the moments you were fully alive, the moments you loved, the moments you created, the moments you chose courage, the moments you became present. That is what gives life meaning, not perfection, not having everything, appreciating something, not controlling the future, living the present. And perhaps that is why silence matters so much. Because silence brings you back to the present. It reminds you that this moment is enough, that this breath matters, that your life is happening now. Not when you become richer, not when you become more successful, not when everybody finally understands you. Now. And if you keep postponing your life, one day you may wake up and realize that the future you kept waiting for became the past. Do not let that happen. Do not let fear steal what time will never return. Do not let distractions rob you of experiences that deserve your full attention. Do not let the noise outside become louder than the truth inside. Because there is something within you that the world cannot give and the world cannot take away. Your ability to choose, your ability to become, your ability to begin again. No matter how many mistakes you've made, no matter how much time you've lost, far you've wandered, you still have this moment. And this moment is powerful, because a single decision can alter the direction of an entire life. Not instantly, but eventually. That is how mountains are climbed. That is how dreams are built. That is how broken hearts heal. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary. Not through perfection, through persistence, through awareness, through the courage to keep returning to what truly matters. And what truly matters has been waiting for you in the quiet, patiently, faithfully, without judgment, waiting for the day you finally stop running, waiting for the day you stop searching everywhere else, waiting for the day you understand that peace was never hiding from you. You were hiding from it. So before you rush back into the noise, before you hand your attention away once again, before another day disappears without your permission, stop. Be still. Listen. Not to the world, not to the pressure, not to the endless demands around you. Listen to the silence. Inside that silence is a voice that has known who you are all along. And perhaps hearing that voice again will be the moment you realize that 1 minute of silence was never just a minute. It was the beginning of everything.